Day 1204 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 999,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,120 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 8 tanks, 15 APVs, 34 artillery, and 1 rocket launcher, with an above-average day seen for armoured vehicle losses, which has otherwise taken a drastic drop when averaging out these days' losses compared to last year, and with an overall drop that indicates a direct correlation to the current battlefield dynamics of motorbikes and donkeys. Then headed across to the map, where in the early hours of this morning, Ukrainian kamikaze drones zeroed in on the Tambov gunpowder plant just below the capital city of the same name. The plant is one of Russia's largest ammunition powder producers, sitting a hefty 500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, but not nearly far enough. The strike ignited a fire with unmistakable signs of secondary detonations rippling through the air, and where Russian telegram channels quickly confirmed the hit and subsequent blaze. Also noting that the plant, owned by the Rostec State Corporation, is key to manufacturing powder for nearly all types of small arms, hand grenades, RPGs, and artillery shells. And so the significance of this plant, like so many others that produce for the specialized military needs of the Russian army, lies in the way of how a small circle of kleptocratic oligarchs have monopolized control over the defense contractor industry within the country, because rather than spreading their operations across numerous distant plants to mitigate risk, their main priority instead is to limit costs as much as they can as a means to pocket the difference from those defense contracts. The outcome being fewer and more concentrated production facilities like these in the country. It's examples like these that have, in turn, led Russia to having one of the planet's highest concentrations of superyacht owners. Then headed across to the Engels Air Base in Saratov with satellite imagery showing that fires were headed into their 5th straight day, following a successful UAV strike on its oil depot. But then, just moments ago, powerful new explosions were reported near the Engels Strategic Air Base, with smoke visible in the area. No official information as yet about the origin of these new plumes of smoke, but it does look like Private Sigaretov has made a visit to town. Next up on the map, and thank our lucky stars, witnessing another of Russia's new 152mm Molva SPGs. This one was a little too nervous to travel over the border, located inside of Kursk, where it took on a hit by Ukrainian drone fire. This one must now be the 7th or so, seen in the field, with all of those previously seen destroyed or taking damage. The bigger point here would be that, after all of this time, Russia is still simply not capable of producing these platforms in any kind of meaningful volume. Next, and again in Kursk, this night, Ukrainian drones struck a Russian military deployment point in Marino. According to preliminary information, a company-sized unit of Russian airborne forces had been reportedly stationed there. And still with more in Kursk, a Ukrainian fiber-optic FPV drone destroys a Russian Typhoon K armoured fighting vehicle hiding in a hangar. If a site looks like it can store a vehicle, then those drones will come flying right on in. And then finally for the region, the AFU slowly and methodically aiming to remove the Tetkino pocket, with Russian positions taking a further pummeling, as more Ukrainian aviation continues to be called in. Then headed across to the adjacent Kursk-Sumy border, in a manner of speaking, with latest reports of Russia's moving of troops and gear from Crimea and Kherson to this northern front. Included in the transportation, 10 self-propelled artillery, an air defense system, and 40-plus trucks seen rolling through Mariupol, stripping the south to shore up the northern front. But where they are sent to, where they go between Sumy and Tyotkino is anyone's guess, but with a likely requirement found to split up this small amount of additional resources, which is far from a game changer. Then headed across to Kharkiv with the curious case of around 100 Russian soldiers permanently repelled perhaps, by the AFU's 3rd Assault Brigade in the Kupiansk direction. And with so many on foot, truly a kamikaze-style infantry tactic the Russian army employs, sending small wave after wave of foot soldiers to their demise. Now I say on foot, but that's not even completely accurate, as one invader was using crutches while another relied on ski poles for support, or so it seemed. Then further down the map, headed to the Seversk direction in the northern Donetsk region, where Ukrainian soldiers from the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade repelled a Russian attack on motorcycles. Now, motorbikes over armored hardware has led some factions within the Russian army to attempt a positive rebranding of these two-wheeled offensives, asserting that motorcycles outperform armored vehicles. They boast about their speed and agility, claiming these bikes are practically invincible to Ukrainian fire, although likely saying so to persuade themselves more than anyone else, as the consequences for these riders are all too devastating. Then across to nearby Spirna, where heavy armor wasn't doing much better, not much better at all, with footage of the repelling of the Russian mechanized assault by soldiers of the Force of Freedom Battalion of Ukraine's National Guard Brigade. Then headed across to the Toretsk direction, as it leads on from stalling momentum of the invading forces to the east, nearer to Pokrovsk, with the current state of play for Russian forces expected to be a repositioning further east to close a rather wide garrison held by Ukrainian forces right here. And it might make sense to the Russian MOD, on face value, to plug this gap, but always easier said than done. In fact, there's plenty of smaller pockets right next door that Russia's attritional forces have had issues with grinding away at. Then headed across to Kherson, although happening just over a day ago, with footage showing the annihilation of a Russian drone unit that was responsible for hunting down civilians in the liberated North Bank. This one's a clean-cut example of a Ukrainian recon drone spotter sussing out the site, discovering the out-in-the-open nature of the Russian drone unit, quite literally, in this case, the quadcopter, seen right there. As such, the recon drone called it in, followed by aviation and its French hammer precision accuracy. Then headed across to some news. The EU just released the contents of its hardest-hitting sanctions yet, going after Russia's banks, oil, and energy routes. The plans are to cut the oil price cap from $60 down to $45 a barrel, but also to block the Nord Stream gas pipelines and kick 22 more Russian banks off SWIFT, making it nearly impossible for Moscow to move money around. There's also a fresh €2.5 billion export ban covering everything from metals to high-tech drone parts, closing off ways for Russia to upgrade its weapons. Brussels is pushing Washington to join, while Zelensky goes further, urging the West to slash the oil cap price even further down to $30 a barrel, expressing the sentiment that that's what would really hurt the Kremlin's war machine. Over in the US, Senator Lindsey Graham's new sanctions bill now has even stronger bipartisan support, with 84 out of 100 senators backing the bill, a clear sign that Washington's also ramping up the pressure on Moscow. And you could say ramping up the pressure on themselves to pressure Moscow. So all of these moves are adding up. Russia's war profits are already down by a considerable margin, and it doesn't look like it's going to get a whole lot better. Then to Hungary news, as tens of thousands rallied in Budapest, protesting against pro-Russian leader Viktor Orban, accusing him of decades of corruption in power. The chants of "Russians go home" echoed through the city, and meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky revealed operations in the Transcarpathian region, its physical land connection to Hungary, where Hungarian intelligence operations were probing Ukraine's border vulnerabilities. He also questioned Hungary's interest in Ukraine's air defense locations, with an interesting question coming from him on the matter as he said, quote, "Hungary is interested in the location of Ukraine's air defense. How should we react to this during a war? I am not saying that Budapest has certain intentions, but if not, then for whom is it collecting this information for? Who indeed?" Then headed across to a quick bite of Russian economy news, as the Russian government's finances are sliding fast, with last month marking the first time in a year and a half that the budget revenues fell. In short, Russian revenues down 6% year on year, and expenses up 20% year on year. And the hits keep coming for the Russian economy, as the price of Russian coal hits almost half-decade lows. On top of that, China has just slashed Russian coal imports by 13%, proving once again that the two countries' no-limits friendship has limits. Worse than that, Russian state energy giant Gazprom has had its gas sales to the EU crash by 93% since February of 2022. Combine that with a G7-led price cap on Russian seaborne crude oil that remains at $60 a barrel, with a price cap outlook headed to potentially $45, as mentioned earlier, then Russia finds itself in a severe struggle with its own economy. In fact, Kremlin insiders are now starting to use the R word, expecting a period of decline leading to a recession, even amid all of that military spending that is so far keeping them out of one. Then headed across to a bit of an oddity to round off the video with, not exactly humorous, but you might remember Russia's Skybeva. Remember her? Ultra-nationalist Russian state TV host, as she tried to confront a Ukrainian group performing targeted scams on her and other hosts just like her, with confronting them on live air, hoping to come out looking good. Skybeva, trying to get on her high horse, asked over the phone, "Why are you, Ukrainians, deceiving us, Russian citizens? Is this your principled position?" With a short, quick response from the phone to say, "Because you are freaking devils." Leaving her a bit stunned. 10 out of 10 response. Clean and simple. I like it. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and I do hope to see all of you guys, each and every one of you, there in the next one. Cheers.